Hi, I'm Dr. Daniela Bruckman, and this video is about descriptive statistics. First, let's define statistics. Statistics is the science of collecting, analyzing, and making inferences from data. Statistics allow us to make sense of our data to find trends, patterns, and meaning in the numbers. Statistics also allow biologists and other scientists to communicate research findings and give credibility to research methodology. Finally, statistics allow us to demonstrate quantitative confidence in any differences observed among experimental treatments. Now, in this video, we'll start with some basics. Descriptive statistics are usually the first step done in analyzing data. They allow us to condense our data into a few values that describe the main patterns observed. Now, I'll point out that these types of descriptive statistics are most useful when analyzing categorical data. If you don't recall what categorical data is, I recommend watching our first video on types of data. Now, the first kind of statistics we can calculate is known as a mean, also known as an average. The mean gives us an idea of the central tendency of our data. Now, the mean is calculated simply by adding up all of the numbers in a data set and dividing by the total number of observations. Here we can see the official equation for calculating a mean. The second type of statistics we'll cover is known as the standard deviation. And a standard deviation is a good way of understanding the spread of your data or understanding how much variability there is in a set of numbers. The equation for the standard deviation is shown below. It's a little more complicated, and you won't need to actually use it in order to calculate it using Google spreadsheets. Okay. The next thing I want to do is simply point out why standard deviation matters. I've got a couple of simple data sets here, data set 1 and data set 2. Now, if we calculate the mean of data set 1, we'll find that it's 4.79. We can do the same calculation for data set number 2. Remember, we're just adding up all these numbers and then dividing by the total number of numbers. So in this case, adding up these 5 numbers and then dividing by 5. The mean for data set number 2 is 4.8, almost identical to data set number 1. Now, even though these two data sets have practically the same mean, you'll notice that they're really different sets of numbers, and that'll be more apparent by looking at the standard deviation. So if we calculate the standard deviation for data set number 1, we find that it's 4.66. And for data set number 2, it's 0.4. So clearly the standard deviation is much higher in data set number 1 than data set number 2. And that can be seen by the much greater spread of numbers in data set number 1. Notice that we have anywhere between 1.59 and 12.9. Compare that to data set number 2, the spread of the numbers is much lower. So everything is much closer, 4.28 to a max of 5.35. The lower standard deviation points out that these numbers are more tightly collected around that mean value. We can also see the standard deviation visualized in a typical bar graph by looking at the error bars. In this bar graph, we have calculated plus and minus 1 standard deviation to represent the error bars in this case. So notice the error bars are much bigger in data set number 1 and much smaller in data set number 2. Okay, the next thing I want to do is show you how to calculate a mean and a standard deviation using a free tool called Google Sheets. Here we are on Google Sheets. For this video, I've preloaded a spreadsheet with 2 sets of data, data set 1 and data set 2. For each of these data sets, we're going to calculate a mean and a standard deviation. So what we'll want to do is we'll want to find an empty cell, and we'll start by pushing the equals button on our keyboard. From there, we want to start typing the word average, A-V-E, and notice that a menu of different options will come up. You'll want to click on the one that says average. From there, you want to tell the program what set of numbers to take the average of. So you'll simply highlight all of the numbers in data set number 1 and push enter. Our mean in this case is going to be 35. We can do the same thing for data set number 2. Push equals, start typing average, click on average, and then provide the data set or the number set that you want it to take the average of, and push enter. Okay, so we have our two means. 35 is the mean of data set number 1, 32.583 is the mean of data set number 2. How about standard deviation? For the standard deviation, we'll do something similar. Push the equals button, start typing standard deviation. It will give you a list of options once you put ST, and you'll want to click on this one here, STDEV, standard deviation. Again, you'll provide it with the range of numbers you want it to calculate, and click on enter. And then you'll do the same thing for data set number 2. Notice that it gives you a suggestion for the data that you're going to do the calculation for. You can always click on that and it'll do the calculation for you, or you can just do the method that I showed you a moment ago, which is type ST, choose standard deviation, highlight those values, and push enter. So there we have it. The standard deviation of data set number 1 is 8.759, so on. And for data set number 2, 5.48, and so on. What we can tell from looking at these standard deviations, of course, is that data set number 1 does appear to have more variance or more spread compared to data set number 2. All right, let's review. In this video, we learned what descriptive statistics are, how to calculate mean values, how to calculate standard deviations, and how to use Google Sheets to do those calculations. Hope this was helpful. Thanks.